everyone, I'm the Soldier of Science and welcome to YouTube. I say welcome not only to you but to myself, since this is my first real video when I actually talk about atheism. If this is your first time to YouTube, well, thank your local Appalachian or Alaskan community for finally getting electricity to that homestead in the wilderness. The real reason you're probably here, more likely, is you're a fellow atheist, or maybe just new to atheism. So today, our topic is going to be how atheism has taken over YouTube, and I will give you an overall breakdown of the various types of atheist videos which dominate the YouTube sphere. And I know what you're thinking, if I'm going to talk about atheism, why is my channel called Soldier of Science? Are you a scientist? While I do not have a degree in science, it is science which turned me into an atheist. And I also want to reinforce that science is merely the word and method we all agreed to use to describe our reality. And I also think science has somehow been put into this separate category amongst the religious especially, which is ironic because they are accepting the computer and video science when they post videos themselves to YouTube. But I digress. I don't want my channel to be an adversarial one, and I'm still kind of deciding what type of format I really want my channel to be, and that is why I thought it would be great to see the most common formats used by popular YouTube atheists, which also will show how atheism truly is taking over the internet, and hopefully will bring up a conversation on the different styles of atheists and what, if any, impact it may have to influence believers, like I was, to become atheists. So first, let me just give you a quick snapshot of my background and tell you why I'm adding a voice to the overall mix. I grew up in a non-denominational church in Southern California. I went to church 3 times a week, Sunday school, the private school, attached to the church. My grandfather was good friends with the head of the church, and you could say I was heavily immersed in religion growing up. And all my close friends were members of the church. My very first video to this channel discusses that eventual transformation to becoming an atheist, which for me took many decades. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago when I officially started calling myself an atheist, when my Christian roommate at the time was having a debate with me, and he exclaimed, "So you agree with Richard Dawkins that you know there is no God?" And I now know that's not Dawkins' position, but my response at the time was, who is Richard Dawkins? And it is ironic to me he knew more about modern atheism than I did, and thus began my YouTube search and discovery of all of the popular modern atheists, which I'll break down some of them for you. The first ones I came across were the heavyweights, and I should say now that some of the more popular atheists in the eyes of believers and Christian apologists would probably disagree with being remembered as purely being a famous atheist. Christopher Hitchens, for example, who is now deceased, he was the next person I found out about and is undoubtedly one of the most popular modern atheists. But I'm sure he would want to be remembered for being a great journalist, someone who's tried to change the world through journalism and speaking the truth. Dawkins will want to be remembered for his contributions to biology. Lawrence Krauss will want to be remembered as a great theoretical physicist, author, and intellectual. Daniel Dennett, he's a philosopher. Sam Harris is also a neuroscientist. And I think this is important to mention when I'm talking about the styles of atheism. And so the first style which many believers think of most atheists is the angry atheist, right? Well, I don't want to say that some of the atheists I mention here are angry. I'll say that some of the tone of their videos would come across to a believer as being angry. And in all honesty, most atheists I have already mentioned might fit into that category if you were to just watch, say, one video. And it is because being anti-theist seems angry to many believers. Christopher Hitchens is going to be the first person that comes to mind.
Neither of us can prove or disprove the existence of God. The difference is between us. I don't say that I'm an ordained minister.
And he would tell you himself, if he were alive today, that he was not just an atheist, but an anti-theist. And for popular current YouTube vloggers, don't hate me, man, but I think Cult of Dusty is going to be my #1. And maybe TJ Kirk is probably the second. And Thunderfoot, also some of his videos come across angry at times. I could mention others. But as a believer, that's what I would think. And I'm not saying all their videos are like that, but some of them have that tone. I absolutely understand why. When I first became enlightened to the truth, I was pretty pissed off at realizing all the time that I wasted in my life believing something that is and was not true. But let's talk about the impact to believers. I know many of the YouTube atheists who would be considered an angry atheist have a huge following, like TJ with over 1 million. But are they just speaking to the choir? As a believer, I think if someone's tone was angry, I would have immediately shut down the conversation. And the world is different now. We have the internet, but it means you can also pick your own audiences and your own style. And again, I'm just speculating on the level of impact. I'm sure many people have seen an angry atheist video and become an atheist. The second style I'll mention is comedic atheism. While there is no doubt that comedians have made atheists out of believers, I wonder what the true impact is. For me as a believer, I had heard many of these comedians, but since for many comedians, atheism is just a small part of their monologue, I kind of brushed it off as comedy. I probably wouldn't have taken it seriously. I know I didn't, because comedy didn't change me. As a believer, when I heard comedy making fun of religion, it rolled off me kind of like a water on a duck. And as an atheist, I now wonder why it did not have a more profound effect. George Carlin would be the king in this area.
But in the bullshit department, a businessman can't hold a candle to a clergyman. Because I gotta tell you the truth, folks. I gotta tell you the truth. When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. No contest.
I always loved George Carlin, so it's amazing to me that he didn't impact my life to becoming an atheist. And maybe I just hadn't heard his bits about religion, or maybe I blocked them out, I'm not certain. Other great comedians who are atheists include Bill Hicks, Richard Pryor, Louis C.K., Ricky Gervais, Bill Maher, Dave Foley, Louis Black, Jim Jeffries. There's so many more. And I have to give a special YouTube mention here to the YouTube channel Non-Stamp Collector. They're not putting out a lot of stuff, but they have brilliant comedic animations, especially about Noah's Ark. Go check that out. My third type of atheists include philosophers, ex-clergy, and historians. And Daniel Dennett would have been probably the first philosopher atheist video I came across, and it's easy to see why he's the first person I mentioned. The obvious second person is Dan Barker, who's a former pastor and he knows the Bible inside and out. Michael Shermer, probably in my top 3 in this category. One of my new favorites, who's been doing it a while, is Richard Carrier, but I just came across his videos. I love Richard Carrier. And I think I'd put Sam Harris in this category for his knowledge and his style, as well as Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty. Just for their style and their knowledge of the Bible. They're pretty much kind of historians of the Bible, I think they would say. And if I was, as a believer, if I heard any of these arguments, I think that it would have made some impact at the time as to my belief. My fourth category is popular YouTube atheists who aren't necessarily known for anything else other than their videos about atheism. And I put this into a category because as someone who's obviously making a video on YouTube, I recognize how difficult it is to put content out there always just talking about atheism. I mean, there are only so many arguments you can make because the subject of non-belief is just not that vast. Let me say, while atheism may be taking over YouTube, the arguments will continue to be the same because it's just not hard to deconstruct what we currently recognize as legalized fraud, aka religion. So I guess I have to put Jacqueline Glenn here, and then some rising stars like Cosmic Skeptic, Godless Cranium, Vice Rhino, Apologia. I know I'm going to forget some. Seth Andrews, gosh, I can't believe I haven't mentioned him. He's my favorite. He's the guy's voice reminds me of comedian Phil Hartman because he's got that same smooth voice and kind of that same comedic timing.
I got to play my cards up front, my friends. You aren't going to learn anything new or special over the next 45 minutes, okay? You aren't going to leave a better person. And if I was to be completely honest, I just got to tell you, I came all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma, here to vent.
And as a believer, I think a lot of these guys, with their style and delivery, would have made an impact on me to question the legitimacy of the Bible and God. I also recognize that the internet has made it easier to access these voices. And I think the more voices like that, the better, and that's why I'm doing it now. Finally, I come to my last style of atheism, which is gaining traction, and it's not really a style of atheism as much as it is a scientific method to question belief systems. But with that said, I would wager that most of the practitioners of this style are atheists, and it potentially may have the greatest impact on an individual to come to terms with their belief in a God. And of course I'm talking about street epistemology and the street epistemologists. And while not admitting it, these may be the true proselytizers of the atheist community, and therefore it is one of the most intriguing to me personally. Peter Boghossian would be number one in this category. He authored the book A Manual for Creating Atheists, but outside of him, a little-known Anthony Magnabasco is absolutely my favorite to watch, and he has interviewed hundreds of people, and his style is pretty much how I would love to conduct interviews. I think many believers would think that street epistemologists are kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, though, because their true intent, I think, is to get you to doubt the existence of God. I know that's not always their line of questioning. I'm going to get killed for that. And it's almost like religion has created such a lock on the mind that SEs generally make the conversation a one-sided conversation. And this might be my biggest criticism of street epistemology, but it's the fault of religion and not the Socratic method. Other street epistemologists which I love to watch include Cordial Curiosity. He's great. Another new guy, Open Inquiry. God, I'm going to forget some guys too. But these guys are doing real work on the ground as soldiers of science, and therefore I have to put this method as number one overall impact for me if I had to talk to them when I was a believer. And I know I will have forgotten some names of other YouTubers I have watched videos and enjoyed, and I apologize ahead of time. You can peruse through my subscriptions, and I'm certain you will find some of your own favorites. But thanks for checking out my channel. This isn't the first one. I'm kind of narrating it. I have one other one I put talking about my transformation to atheism, and I hope to put out part 2 pretty soon. And I think I'm going to start doing street epistemology. I'm going to start trying some of that. But I'm also going to try to make videos showing the easiest way for believers to become enlightened to the truth. And that's my goal. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Thank you.